Sorry about that. So where I left off was that Nigeria has one of the largest economies in Africa, the continent of Africa. So this leaves a lot of opportunity for growth. And one of the reasons why it is one of the largest economies in Africa is it's got oil. It has a very large oil industry. It's a part of OPEC or the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So they make a lot of money off of the oil industry. But the problem is, even though they're making so much money from the oil industry, a big issue is kind of something that a lot of y'all pointed out in the past, was the fact that, not everyone is benefiting from this wealth. A lot of times the government corruption prevented people from benefiting. So again, we're kind of seeing some carryover from colonialism Nigeria, where only certain groups of people within the country of Nigeria are benefiting and getting the wealth, like, infrastructure, where you're getting roads, and actually having some well-developed cities. So only certain portions of Nigeria are benefiting from the money. As you can see here, it's some areas are very well developed. Some of them are doing very well off from the oil industries, but not everyone, unfortunately. But again, this is kind of a carryover from colonialism Nigeria, where the British were showing preferential treatment to southern Nigeria versus northern Nigeria. So what is it? I kind of mentioned this before. What do they produce? What are their main exports? The biggest thing to know is this first bullet point: goods produced. They are known for their oil production and their petroleum products, so much so that they're a member of OPEC, or the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Fun little fact of why should we even care about Nigeria? How does this even connect to us? Well, 46% of Nigeria's oil production goes to the United States. So almost half of the oil that Nigeria makes comes to the United States. So that's a significant amount of their oil. So they're one of our main suppliers of oil. So again, the first bullet point, they're known for providing oil. Okay, so that answers the economic question of what to produce. They answer it by producing oil. So then, with such a large number of our oil supply coming from Nigeria, you would kind of assume, okay, well, if, people who make a lot of money from oil, this should benefit everyone. Well, kind of like what I had mentioned before, it benefits only certain groups of people and not everyone. Some of y'all mentioned that, there's unequal benefits from Nigerian wealth, from oil. And that is very true. Now, human capital, this is where it's kind of very easily seen. Now, just a reminder, human capital is education. How does the government invest in education? How do they make sure that their population has the education that they need to be successful? So first of all, first two bullet points are very, very important. They're a very well-educated population. Education is very top priority. However, and a lot of y'all mentioned this in the past, but also this carries over again from the unequal treatment during colonialism, where southern Nigerians were treated differently than northern Nigerians. There was a lack of investment in job training, healthcare, decent pay, housing, and food supplies. As you can see in some of these pictures, the classrooms look very different depending on where you go. And also the environments can be very different depending on where you go. So again, unfortunately, this is another carryover from colonialism in Nigeria, where only certain groups of people in Nigeria benefit from the oil industry, and the human capital investment really does help them. Yes, everyone has access to education, but only certain groups really benefit and really can go far with it, unfortunately, due to just some carryovers from that. So capital goods, as you can see, there's one big takeaway. Capital goods, remember, are technology, machinery, equipment used to kind of help with the economy. So as you can see here, they invest a lot of money into the oil industry. And again, you can see that there's more focus on making the oil industry really explode and like just make a lot of money from the oil industry. So they invest a lot of money into the oil industry, into making sure that that continues to be the case. The oil industry and giving the latest, the greatest, and the best equipment is the main focus. So GDP and GDP per capita. So what does this look like for the people? What is the gross domestic product? What is the average amount of money that they make overall and then that they make per person? So here's what's interesting. And honestly, I would focus on the second and the third bullet point. There is a huge gap between how much the country makes as a whole and then what people on average make in a year. So first of all, the country as a whole, very wealthy from the oil industry. As you can see here, they have large and very advanced cities, and they have a lot going on for them. However, it's not benefiting all people, and the pay per year is actually pretty low. And again, this goes back to what a lot of people had mentioned to me in the past, and had mentioned in the past. Nigeria is still trying to recover from having a poorly organized government and from government corruption and dictatorship. Even though Nigeria technically had a parliamentary democracy for many years, it really truly wasn't a democracy and wasn't really attempting to try to be a democracy, not at least for the past few years. Right now, they're trying to make sure that issues from this poorly organized government and also issues that carried over from preferential treatment under British colonialism, where, you know, the southern Nigerians were treated a little bit better than the northern Nigerians, that's not carrying over anymore, and that the money that Nigeria is getting from the oil industry is going to benefit not only, you know, growing the oil industry, but also making sure that roads and cities and infrastructure and everything goes back to benefit the citizens and the people. All right. So the last little bit is trade barriers. And the biggest thing is number 2. Now, just reminder, trade barriers are anything that kind of restricts or limits trade. And in some cases, it's just to make sure that there's a balance. Like, for example, Nigeria is a member of OPEC because they produce so much oil, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. The second bullet point is very important. So OPEC actually has a quota on Nigeria's amount of oil production, meaning they're regulating how much oil that Nigeria can sell, also the price. Because here's the thing, OPEC as a whole need to work together to make as much money as possible. So what they'll do is OPEC tells the Nigerian government, okay, this is how much oil you can make in a year, and this is how much you can sell, and this is the price that you can sell it at. All right. So I hope this was helpful about the Nigerian government and economy. If you need to replay either of these parts of the videos, go for it. That's why I'm making these screencasts. Let me know if you have any questions. And I look forward to hearing from y'all.